점수 잡는 hackers.
If you haven't already, make sure that you read this passage on your own first, War on the Unemployed, and then come back to this lecture. All right, then if you read it, let's go over today's goal. The author's name is Paul Krugman, and the passage name is War on the Unemployed. It was written in 2013, and usually they're going to tell you where they got it from. They got this article from the New York Times. You can obviously know that the New York Times is not just an article, it's a newspaper article. You can know that it's a newspaper article because it has the word New York. So if it has locations in the name, then it's going to be a newspaper article versus a magazine article. All right, let's go over today's goal. We're going to first go over the reading. So we're going to read the passage together. And while we read the passage, we're going to also look at the analysis. And we're going to look at some of the features that were given in the article. The first one, stylistic elements. There are multiple types of stylistic elements, but we're first going to go over discourse diction. You could also call it word choice. So using specific word choice to prove a point or to emphasize a point. We're also going to go over appeal to ethos, which is appeal to ethics. The second rhetorical device, evidence, and specifically evidence, we're going to look at statistics. So you need to look for numbers, percentages, dollar signs, year. So make sure that you look for the numbers. And lastly, we're going to go over reasoning, which is a rational argument that is given by Paul Krugman. At the end, we're going to do a quick review of the main points and the rhetorical devices. Then let's go straight into this box. This box is given at the end of the passage. It's going to be your instructions. Now, since this is the first lecture, let's look it over word by word and sentence by sentence. Write a response that explains how Paul Krugman. Now, I emphasize Paul Krugman because we're going to refer to his name multiple times in our essay. So make sure that you have the full name, Paul Krugman. Constructs an argument to persuade his argument. Now, sometimes you look at the name and you're not sure if it's a male or female. So you're going to look for this. His, obviously going to be a male. And whatever comes after this, that is going to be our main point. Now, this is going to be your main point. So make sure that you take this tip and you refer to it constantly while you read the passage. Now, what is this main point? Cutting benefits to the unemployed is both cruel and based on bad economic analysis. So make sure that when you read the passage, you find the main points dealing with cutting benefits to the unemployed, and you need to look for how it's going to be bad. So he says it's cruel, so look for the main points that show how it's cruel, and you're going to also try to find the main points dealing with how it's based on bad economic analysis. Okay, so this is your main point. Make sure that you have this memorized and you have this paraphrased. Let's continue. In your response, explain how Krugman uses the elements of persuasive writing listed above the passage. Now, these elements of persuasive writing are what we just went over in today's goal. The stylistic elements, evidence like statistics, and logical reasoning like a rational argument. So if you can, you should talk about those three. When developing your response, please ensure that it addresses the most important aspects of the text. Now, this is really important because a lot of people in 50 minutes, they try to talk about all of the aspects in the text, but that's going to be nearly impossible. So you're just going to talk about the most relevant or the most important aspects. So just talk about the main three features. Make sure you talk about three main points. You don't need to talk about everything in the article. Let's look at our directions. Your essay should not discuss your own thoughts or feelings about Krugman's claims. Now, it says that it shouldn't have your own thoughts. So you're not going to use phrases like, I agree, I disagree. You should refrain from using the word I in your essay. Instead, it should explain how Krugman constructs his argument in order to persuade an audience. You're going to talk about Krugman's argument. So in your essay, you would use phrases like, Krugman's argument is very persuasive because. Or you can write, Krugman makes a very convincing argument because, and you would explain why he makes a convincing argument. Now, if you look at these directions, follow the directions, but also look at the hints that it gives you. Paul Krugman, they have the full name. And then after, they use the last name, Krugman, Krugman. So obviously, when you write your own essay, you should also use the full name once in the introduction, Paul Krugman. And then in your body paragraphs, you can just refer to him as Krugman. All right, then let's look at that claim. Now that claim that I just put a star next to, that was this claim right here. Cutting benefits to the unemployed is both cruel and based on bad economic analysis. Now this is the main point given in the instructions, but you can't keep using the same words over and over. You need to paraphrase in your essay. So you need to change the wording around. So let's look at how we could change it. Instead of writing cutting benefits, you can write slashing benefits. So another word for cutting is slashing. Instead of writing is cruel, you can write is harsh. A cruel policy, a harsh policy. And what was given in the box, based on bad economic analysis, but you can switch that around to rooted in unsound economics. Another word for bad, unsound. Okay, let's look at our next sentence. The war on the unemployed. The war on the unemployed is talking about cutting benefits to the unemployed. So we paraphrase that. That was actually even in the title, the war on the unemployed, is not only unjust. So instead of using words like cruel, I used words like unjust, but also a result of irrational economic beliefs. Instead of writing bad economic analysis, I wrote irrational economic beliefs. So you could switch these words around. And also, the last one, the war on the unemployed is completely, and instead of using the word cruel, you can just use the word irrational. So make sure that you have this main point memorized, but you also paraphrase the main point because we're going to keep referring to it in our essay.